After the transmission ended, Shunho turned to his staff. Their faces showed the same shock and concern he felt. "Send a quantum messenger drone to the throne world," he ordered. "Priority 1 message for the Emperor's eyes only." Hours later, the drone returned with the Emperor's response. Shunho read it in his private quarters, his expression growing grimmer with each word. The next morning, Captain Song received a communication request from the Hegemony flagship. "The Emperor has authorized me to resume negotiations regarding the Kuiper resources," Admiral Chino announced stiffly. "He suggests a compromise may be reached that benefits both our civilizations." Song nodded. "Excellent. As a gesture of good faith, we'll restore your FTL capabilities on your command ship immediately. The rest will follow once an agreement is reached." As promised, the flagship's systems returned to normal minutes later. Hegemony engineers studied the process carefully but could find no explanation for how the humans had disabled or restored their technology so easily. That evening, Admiral Juno sent another private message to Emperor Hook. "The humans could have destroyed us at any time. Instead, they demonstrated restraint and precision. This is not a species we should underestimate or provoke. I strongly recommend a fundamental reassessment of our approach to Earth." On his throne world, Emperor Hook read the message with a grave expression. After 5,000 years of expansion, the Hegemony had finally encountered a civilization they could not simply overawe with their power. He made his decision. For the first time in the Empire's history, he would personally travel to meet with a newly contacted species. Emperor Hook's massive starship descended through Earth's atmosphere, a sight unseen in 5,000 years of galactic history. The Imperial vessel gleamed like a silver knife cutting through clouds, its arrival causing a global stir. For the first time, the ruler of the Hegemony would personally negotiate with humans. In the United Nations Assembly, diplomats and world leaders sat in tense silence. Emperor Hook, tall and imposing, with skin that shimmered like polished metal, stepped forward. His voice echoed through the hall, calm and deliberate. "We come not to conquer, but to propose partnership," he declared, breaking millennia of imperial tradition. Dr. Han Ju, Earth's science minister, watched carefully. She remembered the quantum demonstration that had caught the Hegemony's attention, the moment when human scientists had seemingly made stars dance to their command. That breakthrough had changed everything. The Emperor explained the proposed alliance. No more would humans be viewed as a potential threat. Instead, they would be considered equals, with shared technological and scientific resources. The Hegemony, which had conquered countless civilizations over 50,000 years, was choosing diplomacy over destruction. Historians would later note the irony. The most powerful empire in the galaxy had been stopped not by military might, but by human innovation. The quantum technology demonstrated by Earth scientists had shown capabilities so advanced that even the Hegemony was impressed. As treaty documents were prepared, Dr. Han exchanged a subtle glance with Emperor Hook. Both understood this was more than a political agreement. This was a moment of transformation for two civilizations. Humanity was no longer just a small species on a distant planet. They were now players on a galactic stage. The signing ceremony was simple yet profound. No weapons, no threats, just a piece of paper representing a new understanding between species. The Hegemony's ancient archives would record this moment, the first time they had extended true partnership to another civilization. Outside the assembly hall, crowds watched the live broadcast. People from every nation understood something momentous was happening. The fear of alien invasion, a theme in countless movies and books, was being replaced by something unexpected: mutual respect. Emperor Hook's final words captured the spirit of the moment. "We came expecting conflict," he said, "but we found potential." The phrase would be repeated across media channels, becoming a symbol of interstellar diplomacy. As the sun set on that historic day, Earth looked different. The sky seemed wider, filled with possibilities. Humanity had taken its first real step into a larger universe, not through conquest, but through understanding. After the transmission ended, Shuno turned to his staff. Their faces showed the same shock and concern he felt. "Send a quantum messenger drone to the throne world," he ordered. "Priority 1 message for the Emperor's eyes only." Hours later, the drone returned with the Emperor's response. Shuno read it in his private quarters, his expression growing grimmer with each word. The next morning, Captain Song received a communication request from the Hegemony flagship. "The Emperor has authorized me to resume negotiations regarding the Kuiper resources," Admiral Shuno announced stiffly. "He suggests a compromise may be reached that benefits both our civilizations." Song nodded. "Excellent. As a gesture of good faith, we'll restore your FTL capabilities on your command ship immediately. The rest will follow once an agreement is reached." As promised, the flagship's systems returned to normal minutes later. Hegemony engineers studied the process carefully but could find no explanation for how the humans had disabled or restored their technology so easily. That evening, Admiral Juno sent another private message to Emperor Hook. "The humans could have destroyed us at any time. Instead, they demonstrated restraint and precision. This is not a species we should underestimate or provoke. I strongly recommend a fundamental reassessment of our approach to Earth." On his throne world, Emperor Hook read the message with a grave expression. After 5,000 years of expansion, the Hegemony had finally encountered a civilization they could not simply overawe with their power. He made his decision. For the first time in the Empire's history, he would personally travel to meet with a newly contacted species. Emperor Hook's massive starship descended through Earth's atmosphere, a sight unseen in 5,000 years of galactic history. The Imperial vessel gleamed like a silver knife cutting through clouds, its arrival causing a global stir. For the first time, the ruler of the Hegemony would personally negotiate with humans. In the United Nations Assembly, diplomats and world leaders sat in tense silence. Emperor Hook, tall and imposing with skin that shimmered like polished metal, stepped forward. His voice echoed through the hall, calm and deliberate. "We come not to conquer, but to propose partnership," he declared, breaking millennia of imperial tradition. Dr. Han Ju, Earth's science minister, watched carefully. She remembered the quantum demonstration that had caught the Hegemony's attention, the moment when human scientists had seemingly made stars dance to their command. That breakthrough had changed everything. The Emperor explained the proposed alliance. No more would humans be viewed as a potential threat. Instead, they would be considered equals, with shared technological and scientific resources. The Hegemony, which had conquered countless civilizations over 50,000 years, was choosing diplomacy over destruction. Historians would later note the irony. The most powerful empire in the galaxy had been stopped not by military might, but by human innovation. The quantum technology demonstrated by Earth scientists had shown capabilities so advanced that even the Hegemony was impressed. As treaty documents were prepared, Dr. Han exchanged a subtle glance with Emperor Hook. Both understood this was more than a political agreement. This was a moment of transformation for two civilizations. Humanity was no longer just a small species on a distant planet. They were now players on a galactic stage. The signing ceremony was simple yet profound. No weapons, no threats, just a piece of paper representing a new understanding between species. The Hegemony's ancient archives would record this moment, the first time they had extended true partnership to another civilization. Outside the assembly hall, crowds watched the live broadcast. People from every nation understood something momentous was happening. The fear of alien invasion, a theme in countless movies and books, was being replaced by something unexpected: mutual respect. Emperor Guk's final words captured the spirit of the moment. "We came expecting conflict," he said, "but we found potential." The phrase would be repeated across media channels, becoming a symbol of interstellar diplomacy. As the sun set on that historic day, Earth looked different. The sky seemed wider, filled with possibilities. Humanity had taken its first real step into a larger universe, not through conquest, but through understanding. "Admiral," His sensor officer called out, "We're detecting no movement from Earth. Their defense fleet remains in orbit. They appear to be taking no action." Junho frowned. Curious. Perhaps they need more time to realize their situation. On Earth, in the underground command center, Admiral Doyun stood before the world's leaders. The massive display showed the positions of the hegemony warships. "They believe we will either surrender our claims or attempt to match their military deployment," Doyun explained. "We will do neither." "What do you propose?" asked the Secretary General. Doyun nodded to Captain Song, who stepped forward. She was young, but had helped develop the tactical applications of the Han Kim drive. "Operation Quantum Shield," Song said, activating a smaller display. 5 vessels, 20 crew members total. The gathered leaders looked skeptical. 5 ships against 300. Someone asked. Doyun smiled slightly. "Numbers are irrelevant when you control the fundamental forces of reality." After brief deliberation, the authorization was given. Captain Song would lead the mission personally. In the cold darkness of the Kuiper Belt, Admiral Junho waited. 6 hours had passed since his ultimatum, and still the humans had taken no action. "Perhaps they are wiser than we thought," he remarked to his executive officer. "They recognize the futility of resistance." At that exact moment, alarms blared across the bridge. "Admiral," the sensor officer shouted, "we have multiple contacts in SIR formation." "Impossible," Junho snapped, moving to the tactical display. "Nothing could penetrate our—" He stopped speaking as he saw the evidence with his own eyes. 5 small Earth vessels had somehow appeared simultaneously throughout his carefully arranged fleet. One was less than a kilometer from his flagship. "How did they get past our outer sensors?" he demanded. "Unknown, sir. They simply appeared." "Target them immediately. All ships, open fire." But before a single weapon could discharge, the 5 human vessels vanished as suddenly as they had appeared. "Where did they go?" Junho shouted. "Unknown, sir, but they've left behind objects, small devices near our primary ships. Destroy those devices now." Again, his order came too late. The devices activated simultaneously, releasing a pulse of energy unlike anything the hegemony had encountered. The pulse wasn't destructive. It didn't damage the ships or harm any crew members. Instead, it created a subtle change in quantum fields throughout the fleet. Alarms sounded on every vessel as systems began to fail. "Admiral," his chief engineer reported, panic in his voice, "our FTL drive is offline. The quantum matrix has been completely disrupted." Similar reports flooded in from all 300 ships. None of their FTL systems were functioning. The entire 7th Fleet was stranded, light hours from the nearest support base. Junho stared at the tactical display in disbelief. His mighty fleet, the pride of the hegemony, had been neutralized without a single shot being fired. "Incoming transmission from an Earth vessel," the communications officer announced. A human face appeared on the main screen. Captain Song, sitting calmly on the bridge of her small ship. "Grand Admiral Junho," she said politely. "This is Captain Song of Earth Defense. I hope I find you well." Junho struggled to maintain his composure. "What have you done to my ships?" "A simple quantum field adjustment," Song replied. "Your FTL drives are temporarily inoperative. Don't worry, there's no permanent damage. We can restore your systems whenever you're ready to discuss the mining rights more reasonably." The Admiral's hands clenched into fists. "This is an act of war." Song's expression remained pleasant. "Not at all. We haven't harmed anyone or damaged any property. We've simply created a technical problem that we're happy to fix once negotiations resume." "You expect me to negotiate while my fleet is crippled?" "I expect you to recognize that a technological advantage can outweigh a numerical one," Song replied. "Our 5 ships just neutralized your 300. What do you think would happen if we decided to be less gentle?" The implication hung in the air between them. Junho had studied military history extensively. He knew that when a civilization discovered a revolutionary technology, those who failed to adapt quickly found themselves conquered. "I will consult with the Emperor," he said finally. Song nodded. "A wise decision. We'll wait for your response." Human FTL advancement is equivalent to discovering nuclear energy, while the rest of the galaxy uses steam power. He sat motionless for several minutes after reading this. Then he pressed a communication button. "Connect me to War Master Quan," he ordered. When the stern face of the hegemony's top military commander appeared, the Emperor spoke without preamble. "I require a full assessment of potential human military capabilities based on their quantum technology. I want to know our vulnerabilities if they decided to become aggressive." War Master Quan's expression remained professional, but surprise flickered in his eyes. "Does Your Majesty anticipate hostilities with the humans?" "I anticipate all possibilities," the Emperor replied evenly. "This assessment is to be your highest priority." On Earth, Admiral Doyun received a secure communication from one of the quantum monitoring satellites. The message was brief but concerning. "Hegemony military vessels changing positions. Third Fleet moving toward Sol system access points. Increased communication between military command and throne world." The Admiral immediately called an emergency meeting with Earth's Defense Council. As the leaders gathered, he displayed the latest intelligence. "They're preparing for something," he explained. "Not an immediate attack, but they're positioning their forces strategically." "Do they know we're watching them?" someone asked. Security Chief Subin shook her head. "Our quantum sensors are undetectable. They use the same principles as the drive itself." Dr. Han, who had been invited due to her technical expertise, spoke up. "They've likely realized they can't replicate our technology easily. That makes us both valuable and dangerous to them." "So what do we do?" Director Kim asked. "We can't match their numbers. The hegemony has thousands of warships." Admiral Doyun smiled slightly. "We don't need to match their numbers. We just need to demonstrate that numbers aren't enough against our technology." He activated another display, showing a small, sleek vessel that looked nothing like conventional human ships. "The quantum shield prototype is ready," he announced. "I believe it's time we showed the hegemony exactly what happens when you threaten a species that can manipulate quantum reality." As the meeting continued on Earth, Emperor Huk received the preliminary military assessment. War Master Quan's conclusion was blunt. "If human quantum technology can be weaponized as our scientists believe, the hegemony's conventional military advantage may be irrelevant. Recommend diplomatic resolution while maintaining position of strength." The Emperor closed the report and looked out at the stars again. For the first time in his long reign, he felt something unfamiliar, doubt about the future of his empire. The dispute began over rocks. Not ordinary rocks, but asteroids rich in rare elements in the distant Kuiper Belt. The hegemony claimed all resource rights beyond Neptune. Earth argued that the region fell within humanity's home system and was therefore their territory. Diplomatic talks broke down after 3 tense weeks. The hegemony ambassador finally stood from the table, silver eyes flashing with anger. "The Emperor has decided this matter is not open for discussion," he announced coldly. "The Kuiper resources belong to the hegemony by right of galactic law." Earth's representatives exchanged glances. They had expected this outcome. "We respectfully disagree," said the human ambassador. "We hope you will reconsider." 2 days later, the hegemony made their move. Grand Admiral Juno personally led the 7th Fleet into the outer solar system. 300 warships, each bristling with weapons and antimatter drives, formed a perfect battle formation near the disputed territory. On the flagship, Admiral Junho stood proudly on the command deck. He was a decorated officer with silver skin that bore the ritual scars of 50 successful military campaigns. "Broadcast on all frequencies," he ordered. "Let the humans witness the might of the hegemony." His communications officer complied, and Junho stepped forward to deliver his message. "Attention Earth government. This is Grand Admiral Junho of the Imperial Hegemony. The Seventh Fleet has arrived to protect Imperial interests in this sector. Any human vessels found in the Kuiper Belt will be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly. He smiled thinly as he ended the transmission. The humans had no significant space fleet. Their handful of ships were primitive compared to hegemony technology. This show of force would surely make them reconsider their position. Too easy, he whispered to himself as he slipped past another checkpoint using the stolen credentials. His team had already infiltrated 3 other facilities across the planet. In each place, they found scientists working openly on quantum technology. The humans barely seemed to hide their research. Minho reached the main laboratory and quickly plugged a small device into a computer terminal. Files began copying instantly. Schematics, test data, theoretical papers, everything related to the Han Kim drive was being transferred to hegemony intelligence. He allowed himself a small smile. These humans were clever with their drive, but naive about security. The hegemony had been stealing secrets from alien civilizations for thousands of years. 2 weeks later, in his secure office orbiting the hegemony throne world, Minho reviewed the results of the operation. Something wasn't right. "Sir," his assistant said, entering with a data tablet, "the engineering team has completed their 5th attempt at building a prototype based on the Earth designs." And, Minho asked, already guessing the answer, "Total failure. The quantum fields collapsed immediately. The lead engineer says the mathematics is elegant but somehow incomplete." Minho frowned. He had personally overseen the information gathering. His agents had collected terabytes of data from multiple sources. The humans hadn't detected any of the intrusions. Yet every prototype failed. Back on Earth, Security Chief Subin sat in a darkened room with Director Kim and Dr. Han, watching a holographic display of hegemony ships. "They took everything we left for them," Subin said with quiet satisfaction. "Every single piece of bait." Dr. Han nodded. "The false equation should keep them busy for months. They look perfect until you try to actually build something." "How did you know they would try to steal our technology?" Director Kim asked. Subin smiled slightly. "Because it's what we would do in their position. Their empire is built on technological superiority. They couldn't resist." She tapped a control, and the display changed to show interior images of hegemony research facilities. "What they don't realize is that their stolen credentials also gave us access to their networks." On the hegemony throne world, Emperor Kuk sat alone in his private chambers, reading the latest report from Spy Master Minho. The Emperor's face remained calm, but his hands tightened around the data tablet. "They've anticipated our methods," Minho had written. "The humans have fed us technical data that seems complete but contains subtle flaws. My team has identified 7 critical equations with hidden errors. Correcting one reveals another deeper in the calculations." The Emperor placed the tablet down slowly. In 5,000 years of ruling, the hegemony had absorbed countless civilizations into their empire. Some fought. Some surrendered. All eventually accepted their place in the hierarchy. But none had ever outmaneuvered them like this. A soft chime announced a visitor. The Emperor composed himself as the doors slid open, and Chief Scientist Yuna entered. Her silver skin had a pale cast to it, and her hands trembled slightly as she bowed. "Your report on the human technology?" the Emperor asked. "I've completed my assessment, Your Majesty," she said, her voice unsteady. "May I speak freely?" The Emperor nodded. The quantum principles behind human FTL would revolutionize not just space travel, but energy production, communications, and weapons technology. She paused. If they have mastered quantum entanglement to this degree, they could potentially develop instantaneous communication across any distance. Their weapons could strike without warning. Their defenses could predict attacks before they're launched. "You believe their technology is genuine, then?" the Emperor asked. "Not some trick." "The principles are sound," Yunho replied. "Even with the flaws in the stolen data, I can see the foundation is revolutionary. My team managed to create a small working model based on what we could piece together. It operated for only 3 seconds before failing, but in those 3 seconds, it confirmed everything. The Emperor walked to the window, looking out at the gleaming city that served as the capital of his vast empire. Countless stars were visible beyond, each representing worlds under hegemony control. "Prepare a comprehensive report," he ordered. "I want to understand exactly what these humans are capable of now, and what they might achieve in the near future." Later that night, alone in his chambers, Emperor Huck read the classified report Chief Scientist Yuna had prepared. One passage stood out starkly against the rest. The next day, Ambassador Lee stood in the grand chamber of the Hegemony Science Academy. The room was filled with the galaxy's most brilliant minds, all eager to understand the human breakthrough. Lee was a small woman with a calm demeanor that hid her strategic mind. She had once been Earth's top trade negotiator before being recruited for diplomatic service. A Han-Kim drive operates on principles of quantum entanglement, she explained, activating a small device on the table beside her. A holographic display appeared, showing mathematical equations and diagrams. The aliens leaned forward, their eyes fixed on the projection. "As you can see, we create a paired quantum state between the origin point and destination," Lee continued. What the aliens couldn't know was that key parts of the equations had been carefully removed. Certain critical variables were simply not displayed. The demonstration would work, but anyone trying to replicate it from the information shown would fail. Dr. Han had helped prepare this presentation, spending days figuring out what they could safely reveal. "Show enough to prove it works," she had advised, but not enough for them to build their own. A small model ship sat on the table. Lee pressed another button, and the ship vanished. Instantly, a screen showed it appearing in orbit around a moon of Saturn, hundreds of millions of kilometers away. The audience gasped. One scientist dropped his data tablet. "The transit is instantaneous," Lee said with practiced humility. "What you're seeing is merely our first-generation system." In the back of the room, Commander June watched with narrowed eyes. Later, in a private meeting with the Hegemony Science Council, Lee fielded questions for hours. She answered truthfully but incompletely, always stopping short of revealing the true secrets of the drive. "Your power consumption is remarkably low," noted Counselor Nabi. "How do you manage the quantum field collapse?" "Proprietary stabilization methods," Lee replied smoothly. "We're still improving them." Meanwhile, back on Earth, Dr. Han worked frantically in her lab. Intelligence reports suggested the hegemony was already attempting to reverse engineer the drive based on what they'd seen. "They won't succeed," Director Kim said, watching her work. "Not without the field inversion equations." Han looked up from her calculations. "But they'll try. And they might stumble upon something close enough to be dangerous." "That's why we're moving to Phase 2, Kim replied. "Admiral Do-Yun has authorized the deployment of quantum monitoring satellites. If they start testing anything similar to our drive, we'll know." Across the solar system, human ships quietly took position. Using their undetectable jumps, they placed sensors throughout the region, creating an invisible web of surveillance. On the Hegemony homeworld, Emperor Huck received a confidential report from his intelligence service. The report detailed the failed attempts to extract more information from the humans. "They are protecting their technology with remarkable skill," the report concluded. "Our attempts to access their databases have encountered sophisticated countermeasures." The Emperor frowned. His empire had ruled space for 5,000 years by maintaining technological superiority. Never had they encountered a species that leaped ahead so dramatically in a single area of science. "Prepare the Third Fleet," he ordered his aide. "Position them near the human solar system. I want to know everything about these people, their strengths, their weaknesses, and if they resist our information gathering," the aide asked. The Emperor's silver eyes hardened. "Then we will learn how well their remarkable drive serves them in combat." Unknown to the hegemony, Ambassador Lee was present for this conversation, thanks to a quantum listening device hidden in her ceremonial gift to the Emperor. The device used the same principles as the Han Kim drive to transmit information instantaneously across space. "They're coming," she whispered into her communicator, using a secure channel that the hegemony couldn't detect. "We need to be ready." Admiral Doyun received the message as he stood on the bridge of Earth's newest vessel, the first true warship equipped with the Han Kim drive. "So," he said quietly to Captain Min, "we'll soon see if our technological advantage translates to the battlefield." "Should we reveal our true capabilities?" Min asked. Doyun shook his head. "Not yet. For now, let them underestimate us. It's always worked in humanity's favor." Spy Master Minho moved through the shadows with practiced ease. His silver-blue skin had been carefully altered to match human tones, and special lenses hid his reflective eyes. The Earth Research Facility's security seemed minimal. A few guards, some cameras, and basic ID checks. "Minimal," Han said. "Enough to power a small city for one day can fuel a large ship's jump across thousands of light years." The aliens exchanged looks that Han couldn't interpret. Nabi's hands trembled slightly as she called for a break in the discussions. Later, Han overheard two hegemony officers talking in a corridor. They didn't realize she understood their language. "Impossible technology," one said. "Our scientists proved such methods couldn't work centuries ago. Yet here they are," the other replied. "A primitive species that barely left their planet has somehow mastered quantum transportation, while we're still using dimensional warping methods from 10,000 years ago. The High Council will not be pleased," the first one muttered. "Humans should still be flying chemical rockets, not discovering technologies that could threaten our dominance." When the meetings resumed, Han noticed a subtle change. The hegemony representatives were more formal, less friendly. Their questions became more probing, seeking details about Earth's defenses and industrial capabilities. As they prepared to return to Earth, Nabi took Han aside. "Your drive technology is unexpected," she said. "The hegemony has encountered many new species, but none with such advanced concepts." Han smiled politely. "We look forward to peaceful relations with the hegemony." "Of course," Nabi replied, but her eyes had grown cold. "The Emperor will be most interested in learning more about humans." On the journey back to Earth, Han reported her concerns to Director Kim. "They're afraid of us," she said quietly. "Not of our weapons or ships, but of our ideas. The Han Kim drive challenges their understanding of physics." Director Kim nodded slowly. "Then we need to be ready. If history has taught us anything, it's that fear often leads to aggression." As Earth prepared for whatever might come next, Dr. Han returned to her lab with renewed purpose. The quantum breakthrough that had enabled faster-than-light travel was just the beginning. If they could manipulate the fundamental forces of reality this way, what else might be possible? The stars had never seemed closer or more dangerous. Admiral Doyun sat in his office aboard the orbital defense station, reviewing the data package the hegemony had shared. The holographic display showed the technical specifications of their most advanced warships. He smiled slightly as he reached for his coffee. "This can't be right," he muttered, checking the energy consumption figures again. The door slid open and Captain Min entered, carrying more data tablets. "More information from our intelligence team, sir," she said, placing them on his desk. "Have you seen these power requirements?" Doyun asked, pointing to the display. "Their fastest ships need an antimatter reactor the size of a skyscraper just to make one jump." Min nodded, "And each jump leaves a trail in space that can be detected for days afterward. Like a boat making waves." Doyun leaned back in his chair. The hegemony had presented themselves as vastly superior to humanity in every way. Their empire spanned thousands of star systems. They had been traveling through space when humans were still figuring out agriculture. Yet their FTL technology was shockingly inefficient. "A Han Kim drive uses less power than a small town," Doyun said, "and leaves no trace." "They know that now," Min replied. "You should see the reports from our observers at the Hegemony Council." She activated one of the tablets, showing footage secretly recorded during an emergency meeting of the hegemony leadership. The alien faces showed clear distress. Military Commander Jun, a tall figure with sharp features and silver-blue skin, pounded the table with a six-fingered hand. "We must contain this immediately," he shouted to the council members. "Their technology represents an unacceptable strategic advantage. If humans can appear anywhere without detection, our entire defense network is obsolete." Other council members murmured in agreement, their silver eyes reflecting the light. They'd been in space for less than a century. Another voice objected. "Surely they can't have mastered this technology so completely." "Our scientists have analyzed the principles," Jun replied. "It's viable. Somehow, these humans have stumbled upon a method of faster-than-light travel that our greatest minds dismissed as impossible." Do-hyun turned off the recording. "When is Ambassador Lee scheduled to demonstrate our drive?" "Tomorrow," Min answered. "Dr. Han has prepared a simplified model for the presentation." Dr. Han Ju peered through her glasses at the monitor. The green lines jumped and twisted, showing quantum particles connecting across space. Her fingers tapped quickly on the keyboard, adjusting the test parameters. "We're getting closer," she muttered to herself. The lab around her was quiet except for the soft hum of machines. Most of her team had gone home hours ago, but Han couldn't tear herself away. 15 years of work had led to this moment. A soft ping from her computer made her heart skip. The test results were perfect. The quantum particles had synchronized instantly across a distance of 500 kilometers. No delay. No energy loss. "We did it," she whispered, hands shaking as she saved the data. The Han Kim drive wasn't just theory anymore. Humans could now travel faster than light without the messy problems of conventional physics. No bubble distortions in space. No massive energy requirements. No heat signature for others to track. She reached for her phone to call Director Kim Tae-ho when the lab's emergency line rang instead. "Dr. Han," she answered. "This is Captain Park from Defense Command. Director Kim requests your immediate presence at headquarters." Han frowned. "It's nearly midnight. Can this wait until—" "No, Doctor. It cannot wait. A car is already on its way to you." 20 minutes later, Han stood in the underground command center, staring at the wall of screens. Satellite images showed strange objects near Jupiter's orbit. The objects were massive, each at least 3 kilometers long. Their hulls gleamed with an odd blue-white light. Director Kim Tae-ho stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his face tight with worry. 7 ships appeared 2 hours ago, he explained. "They came from nowhere. Our deep space monitors detected no approach." "First contact," Han whispered. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone. Now they had their answer. Captain Park pointed to a smaller screen. "They're transmitting this message on all frequencies." The screen showed strange symbols that shifted and changed, gradually transforming into Earth languages. "They're learning our communication extremely fast," Han noted. Director Kim nodded grimly. "And they're requesting a meeting with Earth's leaders." 3 days later, Dr. Han found herself aboard a hastily prepared diplomatic vessel heading toward a designated meeting point near the moon. Earth's governments had chosen a small delegation, 3 political leaders, 2 military officers, and Dr. Han representing the scientific community. "Why me?" Han had asked when Director Kim told her she'd been selected. "Because if they ask about the Han Kim drive, we need someone who can explain it without giving away all our secrets," he'd replied. The alien ship that met them was smaller than the ones near Jupiter, but still impressively large. It opened like a flower, revealing a docking bay where their shuttle landed. The air inside was breathable, the gravity comfortable. Han suspected the aliens had adjusted their environment to match Earth conditions. Their hosts called themselves the Galactic Hegemony. They were a coalition of 27 spacefaring species that controlled most of the known galaxy. The representatives who greeted the human delegation were tall beings with silver-blue skin and large, expressive eyes. "We welcome humanity to the greater community of space," said their leader, who introduced herself as Science Counselor Nabi. "We have been observing your world since you developed radio technology." The political discussions were tense but polite. The hegemony explained their rules of space travel, resource rights, and diplomatic protocols. Humanity would be expected to join as a junior member, with limited rights until they proved themselves. Then came the questions about human technology. "Our sensors detected unusual energy patterns from your solar system," Nabi said. "This is what drew our attention. May we inquire about your faster-than-light capabilities?" Dr. Han gave a carefully prepared presentation on the basics of the Han-Kim drive. She explained the quantum entanglement principles but omitted the critical breakthroughs that made it actually work. As she spoke, she noticed the aliens growing increasingly still. Their silver eyes widened. Whispers passed among them. Finally, Nabi interrupted. "You're suggesting your ships can move instantly between points in space with no transitional phase, no warp bubble?" Han nodded. "That's correct. And the energy requirements,